Welcome to the Side Hustlers Society podcast, the place where you can find out more about the hustles that are best for you. And of course, make more money in the process. Elijah has been in the gig economy and freelance space for over 8 years and has done over 4,000 deliveries on Uber Eats. Has several video editing clients, many properties on Airbnb, runs multiple YouTube channels, and is the author of the best-selling book, The Anatomy of Financial Success. It's his mission to empower people with the tools needed to be successful. Now, welcome your host, the king of the side hustles, Elijah Bilel.
What's up, everyone? This is Elijah Bilel from the Side Hustlers Society. Hopefully, y'all are having a good morning, evening, afternoon, or whatever time you're listening to or viewing this episode or podcast. In this video, we're going to be continuing the trend of the anatomy of financial success, which means those personality reports that y'all have ordered are going to come in great handy. And if you haven't got one yet, you'll definitely want to go to the sidehustlersociety.com and pick up your personality report. That way you'll be able to get the maximized value out of what we're going to be talking about here. So these solo episodes, we're really going to be focusing on this until we cover most of the attributes or the ones that are valid towards the theme of the season, which is lead generation. We had an episode between the last time I did the last one, which was boldness, and today. So we're picking up where we left off from that episode, if you will. And we're going to be talking about sociality today. So a lot of people have trouble closing the deal, so to speak, when it comes to sales because they haven't built enough rapport with the customer. I mean, assuming that you have done your job in informing the benefits of your service or product to your customer, the hesitancy from them not buying is going to stem from either they legitimately don't have the money, which that should be the rebuttal that you're getting if they don't have the money. And there's ways to deal with that, which we'll cover later. But that's a rebuttal where if they don't have the money, well, you didn't fail as a salesperson. They just don't have the money. But if it's really anything other than that, it means that they have a limited belief in the opportunity, the service, or the product that you're presenting towards them, or they have a limited belief in you, meaning they don't trust you, which means you didn't build enough rapport. Now, the art of building rapport stems back to sociality or your ability to be social. So we don't like to use buzzwords, at least without breaking that down. So how about we pull up the financial personality report and we break down what is sociality. I'm just going to share my screen real quick for you visual people who are watching. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about. Let's see. Well, I guess this would just go smooth if I just share the screen, not share a tab. Click on share. Okay. So this is a piece of the financial personality report. Sociality. The ability for someone to relate to others and forge relationships. This also speaks to the ability to use one's social skills to make money. Someone with a sociality score below 3 can be socially awkward, and this can inhibit their ability to make money in certain ways. And this is becoming a growing problem in today's society since, in general, people are just less social because they have less direct reason to interact with people. They don't have to interact with people anymore as it used to be. It's more optional, and a lot of people are choosing not to, which is kind of contributing to more people being socially awkward. Someone with a sociality score of 3 has a moderate amount of social skills. They may not go out necessarily to start conversations, but they are pretty engaging once they are in them. And lastly, we have someone with a sociality score higher than 3 has a talent for being a people person. They are socially outgoing, starting conversations, and having the ability to subtly steer the conversation in the direction they want without coming off pushy or forceful. Because of this, they can be very good at monetizing their ability to be social. Now, with that being read, would you believe me if I tell you that yes, there is a talent towards being social and sociality, but it's also a skill that you can develop? See, there are things that people who have high sociality intuitively are doing that they may not necessarily be able to break down like in a format where someone can understand, unless they sat down and tried, but they don't have a reason to try. But if you look at what they're doing, they all follow a certain trend or a certain system And that's the system that we're going to be breaking down today. Now, I would say that if you could reach this level where your sociality is higher than level 3 by using what we're going to be talking about, that's the most optimal result. But truth be told, you can actually achieve a decent amount of success just by staying in the middle range, which is a sociality score of 3. But you want to make sure you're not below 3, because that's when you're coming off as socially awkward, and people shy away from awkward people because it makes them feel weird. You don't want to be in that predicament. Ideally, we want to get those sociality scores up to 5. And this system is the key to doing that. So let's go ahead and get out of this. So for those of y'all that are heavy into the anatomy of financial success, you already know about sociality, and you'll see that the personality types that really need to work on this is the builder, the conservative, and the sniper. Those are the personalities where the sociality is lower than average. So it has the ability to inhibit your success, and we don't want that. And now that we've covered what it entails in the personality report, let's give some additional context on what it is. Then we're going to get into the techniques that I use, because a lot of people are wondering, how was it that I built such a vast business network and also social network? How did I start the Veggie Outers, which is at this point around 300 members, and our turnouts tend to have 20 to 25 people. I mean, some of that is the algorithms like on Meetup and Facebook, but truth be told, I started the Veggie Outers like a good while ago. We're going to have our 9-year anniversary in about 2 months. And back then, the stuff I said didn't really exist. Well, Facebook existed, but it wasn't really going to help you find people. The algorithm wasn't really set up for that. And a meetup wasn't really a thing. So I had to go out and actually find people, quote unquote, recruit people, sell them on the interest of joining the Veggie Outers and vegan food, plant-based food, and the results that they can get from that. And they show up to meetup, have a good time, and they wanted to keep coming. So that requires high sociality skills. And to be honest, I'm a people person, so I'm real excited for this episode. So if we were to put what y'all read in the personality report into like 3 categories, it's social awareness. In order to steer a conversation in a direction, you got to be aware of where the conversation is, if it's going off the rails, how to bring it back, etc. It's also the ability, like I said, to direct conversations. And lastly, I didn't say this in the personality report, but it's very true. It's the ability to show empathy in a sincere way. So if a person is spilling their heart out to you, or expressing, you should be able to feel empathy towards whatever it is that they have going on. And if you can't, they're going to be able to tell. And this plays into the lack of trust factor, which then goes into why they may not be purchasing something from you. You see how this is starting to tie together? So to get started, I want to teach y'all something called the GRIP formula. Now, I'm not the originator of the original GRIP formula, although I have made some modifications to it to enhance the effectiveness of it. This was actually passed down to me by a personal trainer that really put me up on game on a lot of things. But in particular, when we were in the same network marketing group, promoting products for TLC, that stands for Total Life Changes. It's health and wellness products, and they had a tea that allows you to lose weight. Yeah, he passed this information on to me, and I'm glad to be passing it on to you. So we're gonna do another share screen so y'all can see what's in front of me. And if you're listening in on audio, I will say you'll benefit more if you can check out the video. So hit us up on Spotify or YouTube, get access to the video version, and it'll be better because sorry, I'm losing my voice multiple episodes in a row. You know how it goes. But I have bullet points that I'm going to be sharing on screen, so it will just help that much more for y'all to absorb the information. Okay, so this is the GRIP formula. As you can see on the screen, it's an acronym. So the G stands for gathering intelligence, the R stands for reduce resistance, the I stands for initiate, and the P stands for position. So we're going to start going through these letters, and we're going to approach it from the perspective that you just met someone, they just met you, a conversation is starting to happen. Now, for this example, we'll use my skill set, which I'm a video editor, okay? And that's going to be the service that I'm offering to the market as we work through this example. Now, believe it or not, you got 2 options. You can say what it is that you do in the beginning when you introduce yourself, Or you can just introduce yourself with your name. And as the conversation goes on, there's a good chance that they'll probably ask you what you do. I actually like to proceed using the second one because it builds a degree of mystery. You can build a lot of rapport with someone before they actually find out what you do when you get into that. Which approach is best? As you're living your everyday life and going to normal events, I actually prefer the second method. But if you're going to a networking event that's very, very, very fast paced and people aren't, they're like spending 2 to 3 minutes at a time talking to people, then the first method is the more superior method because they do need to know what you do before you leave the conversation or before they leave the conversation. So take this from the perspective that a conversation just started. Hi, my name is Elijah. And you find out what their name is. What you want to start doing is implementing the G in the GRIP formula, which is to gather intelligence. So what does that entail? Okay, too many intels. Let me use a different word. What does that mean? Well, it means that you want to begin the process of finding more about this person in an organic way and building rapport. This is building that trust factor that we talked about, which is holding a lot of people back from making a transaction in the first place. You do this by asking a series of questions to find out more about the person, but there are 5 questions that really allow a person to talk about themselves in an organic way. And people love to talk about themselves. And it's not even an ego thing. We have a problem in society nowadays where the majority of people are not feeling heard and understood. And yeah, that kind of makes sense. There's so many like this job scenario, which we're kind of getting people away from on the side of society. This job scenario, it you spend most of the time at your job. And how many times are you encouraged to give feedback on how you're feeling or even ways to improve like the workplace, stuff like that? Most of the time it's like just shut up and do your job. That's the vibe that people feel. Now it might not necessarily be the case in all job environments, but that's what people are feeling. Then they go home and either they're single or their significant other is stressed out too. So they're not in the mood to listen to what they have to say. And then it's time to take care of the kids. And before you know it, you've gone through the whole day and you just have these pent up emotions inside. And that usually causes problems in other areas. Well, you're giving them a conduit for them to just share how they feel about something or just talk more about themselves. And most people are going to take you up on that. And of course, in the process, this is going to build rapport with them. So let's get into the questions. First question is, what do you do? That's the obvious one. Now you can ask that in different ways, like, so what kind of career are you in? How do you make that bread nowadays? And how you make money? Or you can just ask, what do you do? They're going to tell you, what it is that they do. And this is going to serve as the foundation for the other 4 questions that you can ask. And I'm not saying you have to ask all 4 questions. I would say you should ask probably at least 2 of them to build enough rapport before moving on to what would be considered the next step. So moving on with our example, I'll just say the person I'll be talking to is Todd, and he is the lawnmower. He mows people's lawns and makes his money that way. So he tells me he's a lawnmower. The next question I would ask is, how did you get involved in mowing lawns, or how did you get started doing that? Todd may say something like, "Oh, well, I was always doing it as a kid. My mom and father, my father taught me how to mow the lawn when I was a teenager, and he expected it as part of my chores. So, I was always doing it. And before I knew it, I just thought that, this could be a good way to make money. So when I was old enough, I actually started doing my neighbors' lawns, and, they paid me for it. And, I was actually making a decent amount of money by the time I graduated high school. So from there, I just I just continued making money that way. Now, the next thing that I would say is, wow, that's actually a pretty powerful origin story. Like you actually took a chore that your parents assigned you to do, like when you were younger, and found a way to monetize it, so you'll have like that skill set for the rest of your life, regardless of what you do going forward, huh? Well, yeah, I actually hadn't thought about it that way. Well, I was actually in a similar situation. My father started making me cut lawns around the same age, and even though I didn't go like in the same profession as you, I can definitely relate to that. Plus, it helps you get out the house and get vitamin D from the sun, right? Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, I hadn't thought about that, but I don't have to worry about all this stuff that doctors are talking about in terms of being vitamin D deficient. Then I tell them, well, what kind of hacks did you use when you're mowing lawns as a teenager? Because me, that starts getting boring after a while, and that's around the time when I got my first iPod. So I would put some music on, and it became something I look forward to as opposed to just doing it. It's like, oh yeah, I had this music, this, and this, and we shared what kind of genres of music we were talking about. And before you know it, 10 or 15 minutes may have gone by. And after moving the conversation in that direction, I would ask the next question, which is, what do you enjoy most about mowing lawns? I mean, we already kind of covered that, you apparently really like music, right? So you're listening to that music as you're mowing lawns. But, what else do you like? Oh, man, well, I like that I get to meet a lot of people. A lot of people need their lawns cut, so I feel like it's never going to go out of style. And I was able to branch off into other things involving like lawn care. Then he goes into more details and services that he offers. Then I circle back to me and say, wow, that's real interesting. One thing that I used to love is music is great, but after a while, I started really gobbling up audiobooks like real fast because I just got curious about a lot of stuff, whether it be relationships, health and wellness, finance. So I actually started listening to audiobooks while I cut lawns. And, that's kind of how I matured into adulthood, started learning about a lot of things. Have you ever listened to like any like podcasts or audiobooks while you're doing lawns? Todd will say, oh, you know what? I haven't, but I hadn't actually thought about it. That could be like a good opportunity. Or he'll say, yeah, I have. And he starts sharing the stuff that he's learned while mowing lawns and also making money. Now you're going to start to notice the theme. You want to make sure that when you ask these questions, it doesn't start coming off as an interview. Because if it starts coming off as an interview, people feel like they're being interviewed, and they'll either exit the conversation or they may just straight up call you out on it. Like, were you interviewing me for something? Like, well, what's with all the questions? So the way to do this organically is to ask the question and then they give you the answer. And then you take what they said in the answer and relate it back to yourself and share a story. And if you don't have a story to share, then share something that's related to that overall concept. So if I didn't know anything about mowing lawns, I would bring up something like, you know what? I think it's pretty cool. You're a lawnmower. So I used to watch this show called King of the Hill. Like, you seen King of the Hill before? Oh yeah, with Hank Hill, and he is the propane manager of like such and such. Yeah, I remember that. You remember he used to make a big deal about like his lawnmower, and like when it was on the verge of getting replaced by a better lawnmower, and that model was going to be discontinued. They made a whole like episode about it, and eventually he was able to prove to a focus group that this his lawnmower is superior, and they decided to not come out with the new model. Like, so he's gonna say, oh, I hadn't seen that episode, but that sounds like an interesting episode. Like, what episode was it? Hey man, I can't tell you because I don't have the numbers memorized, but I would say just Google like Hank Hill lawnmower episode. It'll probably pop up, and you can probably watch it on Hulu. Oh, you know what? I think I'll do that. Or either he's seen it, and then we can start talking about the episode. But there's a reasonable gap of just us talking about something else, or me talking and sharing between me asking the next question. Because the next question I would ask after saying that is, well, I enjoyed that King of the Hill episode. And Hank, the way he broke down like his lawnmower and like the reasons he loved it, he really enjoys mowing lawns. Like, what do you enjoy about mowing lawns so much? And you see how I've actually branched off into that question, but just in a different way. You want to make sure that you don't come off as interviewing people. And that's my personal adjustment to the formula. Tachar, the person who taught me the grip formula, he always told me make sure it doesn't come off as an interview, but he never broke it down in that way to make sure that it doesn't. And this is something I found myself doing by default. But when I would teach it to my downline in network marketing, sometimes when they would do it, it would come off as an interview. And then I realized the difference between us was the stories that I started telling or the experiences that I started sharing. Yeah. So bringing the conversation back to where we were, I would ask eventually, what advice would you give about doing such and such? And this is what I like to call the permission to brag question. You're giving them permission to be the expert and to break down their craft to their desire. And a lot of people love to hear themselves talk, so they're gonna take you up on this. And another thing about the grip formula, if you do this, you're gonna find that you're gonna start to become a well-informed person, because people are gonna start telling you about their industries and like these little minute secrets of how to be successful. It's like before you know it, you're gonna start learning a lot. Not enough to where you could do it, but it's just you'll start to be well informed. What I mean by that is you could take this information, and when you go to the next person, let's say if you're in talking to someone that's in the industry that's adjacent to the one that we're talking about here, you could actually bring this up like, oh, I was talking to someone, and he owns a lawnmower business, and um he actually branched off into landscaping, and he told me this, and this, and like you're telling me this, and this, and your industries are pretty like kind of like parallel. So like it's really helping me paint a full picture of like what all this is. Now, when you ask this question, what advice would you give about such and such, in this case, about being a lawnmower or a landscaper? If you haven't done so already, this is a great time to introduce what you do. So when they say what you do, you want to find some kind of similarity in what they just told you with what you do. And it might take some creativity to do this, but at the end of the day, you can find a similarity in pretty much anything when it comes to just work in general. So he starts telling me about landscaping, and let's say that he he starts telling me about landscaping and what advice he would give, and I'm gonna direct the conversation to, so how do you? What's your main way that you like get your clients, like get leads, or how does that work? Well, he tells me whether it's door to door or he does a lot of online marketing or whatever. Well, now I can say, I can actually kind of relate to that because, I'm a video editor by trade, and, getting clients is very important. So I do a lot of marketing online. I have a web page that has like a full FAQ that breaks down any questions someone has. And I have this process that makes it extremely easy for them to book. So you told me like you have a website where they can see like all your work, all your previous work, your prices, and it's easy for them to book. I imagine that's why you stay booked, because the booking process is so easy. That's the key to really having leads continuously flow in so you can keep making money, assuming you can close the leads or they're just paying on the website. So it looks like we have that in common. And then he finds out, oh, you're a video editor? Oh, wow. I guess we do have a lot in common. And you have a chance to share some things about yourself. And the last question you see on here is, what's the craziest thing you've encountered doing your XYZ? Now, this question is probably the question that builds the most rapport, because they just never had a situation where they told anyone their craziest story most of the time outside of like co-workers or like people in their industry. I mean, if you're sitting with your buddies having a beer, this is probably a question that's gonna get tossed around the table. Like, yo, what's the crazy story? And then y'all share. But outside of that, no one's probably ever asked them this. So you're giving them permission to share some stuff that they would love to talk about, but it's just not appropriate to, because like it might be off the walls. Like if they're a janitor, they may have come across a situation where they walked in the bathroom and like someone was taking a dump and they ran out of toilet paper, and like it took them 5 minutes to work up the nerve to ask the janitor, hey, do you have any like toilet paper? I'm kind of out. Like, oh, sure, sir. I'm gonna put it underneath the stall, and you should be able to take it from there. And you found it funny that like you were in there cleaning the stall and all that stuff, and it took them that long to say something, even though I'm just fully making that up off the cuff. Most of the time, they won't even enter the restrooms unless it's empty. Then they'll put that thing sectioning it off, saying that the janitor's clean and unavailable. I'm just thinking off the cuff, y'all. But my point is, they have a story that they're going to share that they haven't shared with that many people that they want to share, and they get to share it with you because you've given them permission to, and you built a lot of rapport in the process. And if you ask this question, you're going to have some pretty entertaining things being said to you. I'm going to tell you that much. One thing I want to say about these questions, you don't have to ask them in this order. I'm just asking them in this order because this is the order that I wrote them down. But you can mix it up. I mean, if you build a lot of rapport with someone, like you'll probably notice that the questions have gotten more interesting the more that I go down the list. sometimes you'll just build up a crazy amount of rapport with someone pretty fast right out the cuss. You might skip to like just what advice would you give or what's the craziest thing instead of asking like what do you enjoy the most about it or like how did you get in? Like those are more formal, kind of, I don't want to say boring, but they just lead to more static and robotic answers. The last two can lead to more energetic and emotional answers. So feel free to move these questions around as you see. And you don't have to ask all the questions, like I said. I would ask at least two. And if you feel like enough rapport has been built up, you don't have to go through all of these questions. That brings us to the next part of the grip formula, which is the R, which is reducing resistance. So the whole concept here is you're trying to build a relationship with this person. So you don't want to bring up stuff that y'all don't have in common. You want to highlight similarities and avoid differences. So let's circle back to the landscaper that I'm talking to. Let's say if the conversation was to go in a direction where, like, you know what, it's pretty interesting because I was looking at TV and I was kind of seeing how like Trump being president is going to impact my business because I have a disagreement with his politics, or I have an agreement with his politics, and I have problems with Biden or whatever. In general, I personally don't talk politics because somewhere along the line, we're probably going to find a disagreement. And plus, I'm not really a political person in terms of, it's just not my cup of tea. So if that instance were to happen, I would say, well, I can't really speak on how Trump was going to impact, our industries, but I can say this: in general, it always circles back to us because we're both freelancers, right? So we have the ability to do something about our circumstances versus other people who like work jobs. Whatever happens just kind of goes. You know what I mean? And with that being the case, I always looking to put the blame on someone else. But we have the power to really change things since we could raise our prices or we can negotiate better or we can negotiate more long-term deals to secure the next 6 to 12 months with our services. So I'm actually glad that I don't have to worry about what Trump's going to do. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, you know what? You got a good point. Then I'll direct the conversation back on track to those questions. That's an example of me avoiding differences. Highlighting similarities. As far as highlighting similarities, I don't really need to go into detail on what that means because y'all saw me doing that throughout the whole like, mock demonstration or social demonstration between me and the made up person Todd. So the key is to highlight similarities. With that being said, the reducing resistance part is more of a framework for you to work in. It's not like any individual steps that you're doing. This is like while you're doing the G in there, which is the gathering intelligence, you want to make sure that you're highlighting similarities and you're avoiding differences so that you can keep with the process of building rapport. If you're not doing these two things, if not highlighting similarities, what'll happen is you'll just be having a conversation, but you won't be building rapport. You won't really be special. You'll be like the same as anyone else that they talk to in their life. Just, they're a cool dude, but like, there's no reason to keep in touch. But if you're highlighting similarities, that's what's building the rapport. And avoiding differences is making sure you're not losing rapport. You're not doing the like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, which takes longer to build that rapport, or you're not doing 1 step forward, 2 steps back, which will ultimately put you back at square or put you back at zero. So now that we've covered the first part of the grip formula, the last parts, which is the initiate and the position, are actually going to be saved for a future podcast because everything we've done right now falls under the category of soft selling. Soft selling is a more prolonged process where you built enough rapport with someone over an extended period of time that when it comes time to prospect them for sale, it's real easy to do. It's more so like, hey, where do I buy the product? Versus the hard selling, which is where the I and the P come into play, is you giving the presentation and the details on whatever it is that you offer, and then answering any rebuttals that they have so that they can feel comfortable moving forward with the next step, whatever that next step is for you. We're sticking with the soft selling. It's important to do this soft selling anytime you can because it makes things so much easier. I mean, there's situations where you don't have time for this. Like if you're working a booth and you're selling a product, or you're selling subscriptions, or you're like getting people to sign up for something, you probably don't have the time to do the first part of the grip formula. So you would be doing more hard selling, which would be doing the I and the P, or you would do the grip formula, the first part, in an accelerated process, which we'll talk about later in the podcast in another episode. So that covers it for the dynamics of sociality. Now, as you engage in this and talk to people and work the grip formula, you're actually going to find that your social skills are going to start improving, because the things that hold people back from increasing their sociality is three things. They lack confidence in their ability to adapt to a situation emotionally. So let's say if you're in a situation that you're emotionally uncomfortable with, well, if you don't have confidence in your ability to adapt to a situation, then you're going to be stumbling and bumbling and you're not going to want to enter the situation. That actually circles back to boldness, which we covered in a previous podcast episode. If that's a struggle, go back and listen to that episode on what you can do. So it's either that you don't have confidence in your communication skills, which means that when you walk up to someone and y'all introduce yourselves, like what happens next? And you don't know what to do from there. Well, if you follow the grip formula, now you do know what to do from there because you actually have a system that you can follow. And the last thing that holds people back from developing their sociality is they have a fear of rejection. So what the grip formula does is it gives you the ability and the framework to improve your communication skills in general. Any kind of communication enhancement or sales skills or whatever falls under the grip formula. And we only went over half of it. We didn't go into the I and the P, which is the hard selling, which, like I said, is coming down the line. So that's a reason to subscribe if you're new, if you're watching this on YouTube. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're on Spotify or some other platform, feel free to subscribe on there and you'll drop a review for us. It'd be greatly appreciated. We'd love to hear what you think. So ultimately, you can see the grip formula as the solution for developing your communication skills. And the other two, which is the lack of confidence in adapting to a situation and lack of confidence in, well, I'll just say you're scared of rejection. Go see the boldness podcast to deal with those two things. If you apply the tactics that I showed in the boldness episode, then you can start to get over those. But assuming you got over those and you're in the process of working on this, you're going to become unstoppable. You're going to literally get a pass from the Federal Reserve Bank that will give you the ability to print money as you please. Because all you need to do is literally get out there and talk to people and work the system, and there won't be anything stopping you on doing so. But that's not the end of the episode, because I do have some additional things to share that y'all will find valuable. So I like to call this the power of being memorable. And think of this as more of an enhancement of the grip formula, particularly the G and the R, because you can do those things and get great results, but you'll get even greater results if you're actually a memorable person. Well, how do you become memorable? It's actually a science to it. So let's go into it. So as you can probably guess, being memorable is very good when it comes to generating leads, or it can serve you very good. If you're not memorable, then if they don't need your service at this time, which a lot of people don't, then you just kind of lost that customer, because if they don't remember you or you're not that memorable, when they do need your service or they know someone that needs your service, you're not going to come to mind and you're not going to get the sale. Versus if you're memorable, you'll pop in their head and they'll give you a call or they'll visit your website or whatever the call to action you want them to do. And then boom, you have a sale months or maybe even years later. So there are two ways to be memorable, and one is vastly inferior to the other. The inferior one is to be memorable based on a need that the customer has. So using me as an example, someone needs a video. Let's say they have a podcast or a YouTube channel or some kind of media agency where they need a video editor, a freelance video editor like myself. And during my presentation, I've just made it known that I can do this, and this. Well, they'll remember me because, I really need those services. And that can go kind of far, but it's just so inferior to the next method we're going to go into, which is being memorable created by emotions. To give a visual example of this, I want you to think of some of the fun experiences you've had throughout your life, whatever it is. Like the first time you got on a roller coaster at Six Flags, or the first time you went ziplining, or the first time you had your first cross country or track meet or basketball game. I'm just giving examples, but you probably remember those pretty well. You can remember how you felt that day, how many people were in the crowd, what you ate that morning. You can remember all those minute details, but it's because you were emotionally engaged. Same concept here. Memory works either by the left side of the brain, which is you're going to need this information or something eventually, or the more superior way of engaging your brain so that it remembers something is through your emotions. Because not only does your brain remember, your body remembers too. That plays a role in how you remember all this stuff. So, how do you do that? Well, you got to have deeper conversations that are emotionally engaging. So, when we went through the whole example between me and Todd, the makeup landscaper or lawnmower, you noticed that. Well, this is me talking to myself, so maybe it came off a little dry, but just reverse engineer the dialogue like it was a movie or something. And you can tell it was actually emotionally engaging based on tonality and how we were talking. We were definitely vibing. And that's the interactions that you want to have. How do you do that? Now, the process of doing this will become easier over time. You kind of find your flow and your own vibe. But I'm going to tell you some cheat codes that will allow you to be a more memorable person by having these deep conversations. Because you know me, I love cheat codes in the right context to life. So essentially, the cheat code to this is to be eccentric. The more eccentric you are, the more memorable you are because the more you stand out from the crowd. How can someone not remember you if you actually stand out from the crowd? Some ways you can do this is actually sit down and brainstorm ways that you are eccentric. A lot of people don't actually do this. There are ways that you're different from most people. Just actually sit down and have some introspection to see how are you different from the average person or most people. Yeah, I'll just give a few things right off the bat. Most people aren't quote unquote YouTubers. When I meet someone, that's something pretty different that makes me unique and eccentric. Most people aren't vegans. That makes me unique and eccentric. Most people aren't self employed. These are things that make me unique and eccentric. Most people have never actually done some kind of martial arts. I've done MMA before. That makes me unique and eccentric. Now, if you've done this exercise, you'll have at least two or three things that you can identify to make you unique or eccentric. Find a way of sliding those into the conversation when you're working the grip formula, and this will make you more memorable in an organic way. Don't feel like you have to force it in there. Like if for whatever reason the conversation is going in a direction that you can't slide it in there, then just don't force it. But I will say this: the higher your sociality gets, the more you can really manipulate the conversation to slide anything in there. So when you get more comfortable and you really find your flow and your vibe, you'll find a way to slide in your eccentric characteristics in there somehow. Another way of figuring out exactly what makes you stand out from the crowd is this is a very introspective technique that will kind of actually share the quality of your relationships. But just ask everyone or like those close around you, hey, I'm just doing some, introspection. You mind if I ask you a question? They'll say, yeah, of course. I've known you for a little while. Like, what do you feel is my superpower towards you? Like, what do you feel that I'm really good at or like that I'm most known for in our relationship? They'll tell you. And when you start hearing like the same thing over and over again, or whatever you hear the most, there's a good chance that that's the quality that will allow you to stand out from the crowd. Oftentimes, when you ask this question, they're not going to tell you the same exact thing as someone else, but it'll be like an overall concept that people are sharing. And if you could put one or two words to that concept, that essentially is your superpower. And that's the quality that is probably going to make you eccentric or unique if you start sharing it in a certain context. So actually sit down and figure out what that is. And this is a good way to kind of gauge like the quality of your relationships. Because if you've actually known someone for a while and they actually can't tell you, well, it means that either they don't really care, but that's usually a minority of times. more than likely, it means that you haven't actually shared enough about yourself for them to actually kind of gauge. So maybe you should actually be more expressive towards people because they don't know enough about you. So that could actually be a good self-reflection on somewhere you can improve. In fact, one of the things about being a more interesting person is to actually pick up a lot of hobbies and see what you like. And then when you like a hobby, just keep doing it. It makes you a more interesting person and it gives you something to talk about when you're talking to people. And it gives you more ammunition to use in the grip formula. Remember what I said about highlighting similarities? Well, if you're an interesting person, highlighting similarities becomes very, very easy because you have so much to share. The key to being an interesting person is having experiences. That's all it comes down to. If you have experiences, you're going to have a lot to talk about, a lot to share, and a lot to highlight in terms of being similar. But with that being said, I think that's a good place to drop it off for this episode. So, definitely, probably my favorite episode doing this season because a lot of people, I see that sociality is becoming a big problem in our society because people don't know how to talk to people, especially with so much technology and this stuff. I'm showing a phone for those of y'all that are listening. The people's social skills are really taking a hit, and I would love to play a role in helping people get those back or develop them. Some people actually never developed them in the first place. But yeah, that does it for this episode of the Side Hustler Society. If you haven't done so already, you'll want to click the link in the description or in the pinned comment to get your financial personality report. That way you can see exactly where you stand as far as these attributes we're kind of breaking down and what you need to work on. And once that's done, you'll find that you'll be able to make more money in the process. I will catch y'all in the next podcast, y'all. Be safe, be profitable, everyone. This is Elijah Bilel with the Side Hustler Society. Peace out.
This episode may be over, but your hustling journey has just started. Visit thesidehustlersociety.com to access all links and resources mentioned in the show that will help you on your hustler's journey.